from Tel Aviv University, TAU, have demonstrated that the COVID can be murdered proficiently, rapidly, and inexpensively utilizing bright, UV, light radiating diodes, UV LEDs. They accept that the UV LED innovation will before long be accessible for private and business use. This is the main investigation directed on the purification productivity of UV LED light at various frequencies or frequencies on an infection from the group of COVIDs. The investigation was driven by Professor Hardaz Mamain, head of the Environmental Engineering Program at TAU's School of Mechanical Engineering, Ibai and Aladar Fleischmann Faculty of Engineering. The article was distributed in November 2020 issue of the Journal of Photochemistry and Photobiology B. Biology. The whole world is right now searching for viable answers for purify the COVID, said Professor Mamain. The issue is that to clean a transport, train, sports corridor, or plane by synthetic splashing, you need actual labor, and altogether for the showering to be powerful, you need to give the substance time to follow up on a superficial level. Sterilization frameworks dependent on LED bulbs, nonetheless, can be introduced in the ventilation framework and climate control system, for instance, and clean the air sucked in and afterward produced into the room. We found that it is very easy to murder the COVID utilizing LED bulbs that transmit bright light, she clarified. We slaughter the infections utilizing less expensive and all the more promptly accessible LED bulbs, which devour little energy and don't contain mercury like ordinary bulbs. Our exploration has business and cultural ramifications given the chance of utilizing such LED bulbs in all parts of our lives, securely and rapidly. The analysts tried the ideal frequency for killing the COVID and found that a length of 285 nanometer was nearly as effective in sanitizing the infection as a frequency of 265 nanometers, requiring not exactly a large portion of a moment to demolish over 99.9% of the COVIDs. This outcome is critical on the grounds that the expense of 285 nanometers LED bulbs is a lot lower than that of 265 nanometers bulbs, and the previous are additionally more promptly accessible. Ultimately, as the science creates, the business will have the option to make the fundamental changes and introduce the bulbs in automated frameworks or cooling, vacuum, and water frameworks, and consequently have the option to effectively clean enormous surfaces and spaces. Teacher Mamain accepts that the innovation will be accessible for use sooner rather than later. Note that it is hazardous to attempt to utilize this strategy to clean surfaces inside homes. To be completely powerful, a framework should be planned so an individual isn't straightforwardly presented to the light. Later on, the analyst will test their extraordinary mix of incorporated harm components and more thoughts they as of late created on joint proficient immediate and backhanded harm to microorganisms and infections on various surfaces, air, and water. The investigation was directed in a joint effort with Professor Yoram Gerchman of Oronim College, Dr. Mitchell Mandelbaum, Director of the National Center for Influenza and Respiratory Viruses at Sheba Medical Center at Telephone Hashoma, and Nehemi Friedman from Telephone Hashoma.